Today I want to look at digital reading and active reading and using digital tools for active reading. We traditionally, when we read, we very often highlight, underline, variously deface copies of the text in order to add our own emphasis and our own understanding of what the text is and how we see it. So if we look at an article here, quite often we'll go through this and we'll highlight things that are important. And there's a range of digital tools which allow us to do this. So for example, here on the Mac, using the built-in PDF previewer, I can look at text and I can highlight it. Very often when you're reading an article like this, in the first paragraph or two is very often just context. So, I mean, this looks important, but it's not necessarily making an argument, it's setting you up. But in order to support the argument, it certainly identifies some points of detail here. Let's use green, like 3.9 million students, or the increase in the percentage of students who are online. And so we can highlight here, well, something that looks like an argument, and then the various pieces of evidence that are put forward to support the argument in that paragraph. So again, this writing is, well, here we go. Let's actually, teaching online seems to run counter to collaboration. And we're going to use our argument color for this. The problem here is, of course, that actually what's happening here is that the evidence that's produced here is still really supporting the argument about the growth. So really these two paragraphs are making the same point. One of the things that actively reading, identifying the argument in a paragraph and the evidence, is that it allows you to start thinking about what the evidence is and whether it actually supports the argument that's being made, or could this evidence support a different argument. And that's important. For example, here, skipping down a little bit, there's an argument about how non-traditional students, adult learners, have been away from academia for years. And in fact, there's a previous one here about non-traditional students having a distinct demographic. I have a slight advantage. I read this beforehand. In order to talk about the demographic diversity of non-traditional students, there is a range of evidence is advanced here. And this is very much a classic paragraph. There's an argument, and then there's some pieces of evidence to suggest what sort of backgrounds non-traditional students come from. And then also their diversity with respect to the challenges. So this paragraph is more about the challenges. That they have different versions of writing skills, that they have different life experiences, which I think might properly, you start to see here, well, maybe that belongs in the previous paragraph, right? But clearly this is all introductory material. And the flip half of this is not just that people really need to find a tool that allows you to read PDFs and highlight it in a way and using multiple colors and annotations that make sense to you, but then also to break the structure of that out and find a mind mapping tool that works. This is Xmind. I like it. There's a whole bunch of other ones that are available, some free, some that cost money. Clearly in this case, this material is largely introduction. The thing about using this as a mind mapping tool is that it allows you then to visualize on one page the structure of an argument. So we have introduction, OWTH, growth in online was the first paragraph, and if I've got this right, the second paragraph was I don't think I've quite got what the argument in that paragraph was. Third paragraph was non-traditional diversity. Right, and in the paragraph about non-traditional diversity, they quoted changes in personal lives, and they have about 3 references there on that, and they have motivations, which again is kind of life changes. Right, so we're drilling down here from this whole thing is the introduction, and it goes on into the second page. Each paragraph makes some kind of argument, and each paragraph argument is supported by evidence or warrants or whatever. So doing this allows you very quickly to break down the structure of the argument and see it visually. There is, for example, at the highest level, the major section where this paper gets into the discussion of detail. Ooh, no, I wanted that. Didn't want that there. I want it there. About ASYNCHRO, asynchronous writing groups, right? Which I have spelt incorrectly. And that's a major section. And actually what I very often do when I'm reading like this is I get all the headings. SYNCHRON, synchronous using chat. I'm going to reduce that because it's quite long, and I happen to know, synchronous, here we go, SYNCHRON, synchronous using web conferencing. Okay, and sorry, I'm in the wrong thing. Down here then we have the last section is called Facing the Future. But really, of course, it's the conclusion. So I have very quickly pulled out what the major sections are, and there's different types of asynchronous and synchronous writing groups, and in each of these, I can go back, in each of these sections there's a discussion. So again, this is, well, the argument here is about the merits of flexibility. And flexibility, there's a list of places where they do a lot of this, but really the evidence is that it permits students, this is the fact, that using discussion forums to support online writing allows students from different time zones to work online together because they don't have to be online at the same time. And there's a little bit more detail here. This is largely a how-to you would do this article rather than a heavily evidence-based one. So the discussion here in the next paragraph is how learning management systems provide the tools to do this, and there are group discussion boards, group areas with group discussion boards, and are able to upload and download discussion start online. You might almost make 3 separate highlights out of that. That in this paragraph, for someone who doesn't know how to do it, essentially what she's doing is she's listing the features of group discussion boards, and that would go in here as part of this. Sorry. So there would be a section here reflecting this paragraph, which would be groups in LMS. Again, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, and that would talk about group DISCU discussion boards, which we already use quite well. We don't use group, we use discussion boards. And This allows you to upload docs, and it allows you to, well, I'll call it conduct online discussions and comment on posts. Right? So we're laying out here, what we're doing essentially is we're reverse engineering this piece of writing. If you'd set out to write an article describing how different types of online collaboration tools can be used to support collaborative writing, then you might have started out scratching some ideas on a piece of paper or sticking post-it notes on the wall and organizing them into some kind of shape and seeing how they came together, and you would eventually have come up with a structure, or you could have come up with a structure which looked roughly similar to this. And that would be your plan. So what we're doing here is we're taking the document apart and we're seeing what was the writer's plan. And that's an important part of active reading. And of course, if you have read several different articles about something and you actually have to write something yourself, then you can simply go through, if for example you were writing an article specifically about asynchronous online discussion groups that use forums for discussion rather than chat technology, then you would go through all the different articles and you'd pick out the bits that were relevant and just copy them into something else. Control C, file, new blank map, ASYNC, and we will just go, there we are. Except the one thing that I haven't copied over is the fact that that was from Malcolm. But all of the notes that I've got from that article are there, and here we can have notes from another article. So there's a number of ways. Obviously, you can do that, between your own work. You can have different people reading different articles and combining the maps. You can use them for brainstorming. There are very high-powered mind mapping tools which will automatically, at the click of a button, produce a project plan. They'll turn all of these things into major and minor milestones, and you can attach dates to them. And for business planning, that's very useful. So it requires an element of visual thinking. It exposes the structure of an argument. The two things, highlighting when you're reading a PDF, using different colors, attaching a note. Remind me, how do I attach a note here? Add note. FEATURE, features of SYNCTISCUS, discussion boards. Boom. Right, there you go. There's a note, and there you can just about barely see the note visible in the corner. And if I save this PDF, depending on what I'm using to do it, it will give me the option to save all the highlights and annotations. So if I go File, Export as PDF, and I'm going to change the name, I'm going to call it Malcolm 2012 notes. Then I should have saved a copy with my highlights and annotations, which I can send to somebody else. So this is important. It's about active reading. It's about taking the text apart. It's about breaking it out into the mind map so that you can see the elements of it. I don't ask students to submit a PDF marked up with highlighting as evidence of reading. I do, in most of my portfolios, ask people to submit a mind map or mind maps of one or more of the articles. And when I'm grading that, if I look at the mind map, if I can see the structure of the article, if it's an article I know and I can recognize it, then I know that the person reading this has understood the structure of the argument and can distinguish between argument and evidence. And of course, in academic writing, one of the things we're asking people to do when we ask people to do something original is to take the evidence that you find and organize it in an argument that you have structured yourself. And when we're going to look at literature reviews, one of the things that we do in a literature review is that we're looking at the arguments that have been made by several different writers on a topic and gathering them together to see what the spectrum of debate on that topic is. But that's the next step. Do I highlight all my articles like this? No. Very often when I'm reading and when I'm mind mapping, I'm doing it for a particular teaching purpose. So quite often I will only highlight the pieces that I want, and very often I will have started a mind map towards a particular thing that I'm teaching or a particular thing that I'm writing, so I will only put on it the things out of the readings that I want. So I don't have folders full of mind maps of every article that I've ever recommended or read, because I'm doing it for a particular purpose, and I tend to focus the work on that. I've recorded this using desktop tools on the MacBook, but I do most of this on my iPad. As things evolve, at this stage in 2015, the tools for highlighting and annotating text on mobile devices are rapidly getting better in terms of the functionality they offer than the ones that are available on desktop machines. So there's a certain amount to be said for looking at what you can find to allow you to read and annotate, particularly PDFs or Word documents, and save those annotations and share those annotations. Likewise with mind mapping. There's a range of tools that you can find. I like Xmind. I also like iThoughts on the iPad, but I like SimpleMind as well because it works on the iPad and it works on my Android phone, and there's a desktop version of it. So it allows me to share maps from one to the other. I should probably show you this, of course, which is if I select this and copy it, and then go to, I don't know if this will work. Oh, actually, let's just do this. This will be slow, but if I start a text document here and open it up, it wasn't that slow. If this works properly, there it is. There's my mind map. I selected the center node. That's how it works in Xmind. It works differently in other things. You may have to select all. Dropped into my word processor and pasted it. And I have an indented outline, which means essentially that this I can then turn into headings and I can write from this, and I very often do. And sometimes as I'm working on the mind map, I'll attach notes, and when I copy the whole lot over, the notes will be there, and I'll have the start of my text, and then I just have to polish it off. But the whole thing is planned, and I sometimes start with a blank page and just start writing something, but very often if I'm doing something that's purposeful, I will plan it out first. And this is where mind mapping apps that work on my phone are useful, because I can do a certain amount of mind mapping on the go when I have a quiet 5 minutes, and then I can upload it, and eventually it becomes a piece of writing. So the important thing about tools for annotating PDFs and about mind mapping tools is that you must be able to get the information that you put in back out. In Xmind, there are a number of ways you can save as, and there's a number of exports options. And the export options, it'll export it as a HTML file. If I've paid for the Pro version, it'll put it straight into a Microsoft Word or an open document text. It'll go straight to a plain text file. And I can also export an image of the map in several different formats. Or, in this case, I can exchange it with other mind map programs, like FreeMind. And some of the other mind map programs will import a variety of different formats. So you really want to think straightforward HTML or text will do fine, because it will get you from there to there. But you do need to pay a little attention to that in terms of how you're working. I'll just cancel that. So that's the overview of active reading using digital tools, and of then transferring that into a mind map. And it's an important stage, and it's one that you should spend some time at. Pick an article, find a mind mapping tool, depending on your preferred platform. I'll post a list in the discussion forum that people can try out. And invest some time in doing this, because it is an important skill, not just in terms of the mechanicals of being able to use these applications, but also the underlying method of understanding how an argument is constructed and being able to visualize it and then group things from different arguments together and repurpose them and reuse them.